this issue is.
Thank you, Mr. Riversberger. Mr. Thornberry.
Well, that's a good lead-in. Director Clapper, you had several bullets in your written statement about cybersecurity, and you said in your oral statement that the impact is difficult to overstate. But as you know, there is really a difference of opinion about whether we're talking primarily about annoyances, you know, with computers that run slower, whether we're talking primarily about crime with, as you mentioned, theft of intellectual property and certainly a lot of money that is stolen. Or whether we really are talking about a matter of national security. And so I would appreciate if you and maybe Director Mueller and Director Panetta could talk to us about the degree to which cyber threats do pose a threat to our nation's security, because that is relevant to how much money and what kinds of authorities we have to look at to deal with the problem. But first we need to understand whether we're talking primarily about crime or whether we're talking about national security.
Well, the effect can be the same, whether it's the source of an attack or an intrusion comes from a criminal, be it domestic or an organized international ring. From a national security standpoint, I think the threats posed by certain nation states is quite profound. If, in fact, the capabilities that we ascribe to them were actually exercised. So I think what we see in terms of these penetrations, some of which I alluded to by way of example, and what the potential is there, I think does emphasize the importance of this whole issue of cyber protection. I think we're very interested in the administration in engaging with the Congress on the multiple legislative proposals that have been put forth. But it is potentially a huge threat to our security. I think the Department of Defense's stand-up of Cyber Command is you know, the department's clear recognition of this and the importance of having a cyber arm in a warfighting capacity. And similarly, I think that the community at large, particularly the Department of Homeland Security, sees this from a domestic perspective. In the interactions that I participated in with key industry officials, I think there is a growing awareness of the potential vulnerability to this country because of our huge dependence on cyber for a whole range of things.
Without a question of doubt, it's a very large national security issue in a variety of ways. If you look back historically and see what Russia had done in Estonia several years ago, or in Georgia beforehand, offensively, and exercising its military might in the cyber arena, as an example, you have in the counterintelligence arena today not just intelligence officers, but you have probes and capabilities of intruding into networks and exfiltrating the information that would be beneficial to you, that previously you would have to recruit somebody inside to obtain, which makes it much easier for those who are trying to steal our secrets to steal our secrets. You have the possibilities of assault on the infrastructure and bringing down pieces of the infrastructure if they're not adequately protected. And then you have, which has been our traditional bailiwick, a crime in banks, and robbing banks of millions of dollars over by intruding and upping the limits on, say, ATMs. The problem from our perspective is we tend to think of it in particular categories, crime versus government involvement, and yet at the outset you do not know whether it may be a state actor, a group of individuals operating at the behest of a state actor, or a high school kid across the street. And consequently, for us, it's coming together as an entity and bringing our skill sets together before we denominate it as a crime or a counterintelligence probe or and working together to identify and attribute the intrusion and decide what course to take in terms of going criminally or treating it as a national other national security challenge.
I don't think there's any question but that
this is a real national security threat that we have to pay attention to. I know there are a lot of aspects to it. The internet, the cyber arena is this vastly growing area of information that can be used and abused in a number of ways. But when it comes to national security, I think this represents the battleground for the future. I've often said that I think the potential for the next Pearl Harbor could very well be a cyber attack. If you have a cyber attack that brings down our power grid system, brings down our financial systems, brings down our government systems, you could paralyze this country. And I think that's a real potential. And that's the thing we have to really pay attention to. Other countries are developing a significant capacity in this area, whether it's Russia or China or Iran. We're now the subject of literally hundreds of thousands of attacks that come in an effort to try to get information. We've got to develop not only defenses against that, but our assets in places where we can provide sufficient warning that these attacks are coming.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Mr. Thompson from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of